Boogie Down with reformed Dobble girl Chase Masterson as she takes you inside Discovery every week on the all-new Star Trek podcast, Disco Nights. From the producers of Inglorious Trexperts, wherever you listen to the 4:30 movie. And keep looking at the stars.
Hello, this is not Gene Roddenberry, but if I was around, I would definitely be listening to Inglorious Trexperts, the new podcast from the people who brought you the 4:30 movie. Check it out, 430movie.com.
Back in the 70s and 80s, before the advent of VHS, chances are if you saw a classic movie, it was on the 4:30 movie. With their famous theme weeks, it was a chance to see movies you never saw before and get reacquainted with some old classics. So, join us now for the 4:30 movie.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman, and this is Can't Stop the Music Week. Welcome to the 4:30 movie. Here we are with our regular band of expert programmers, Mr. Stephen Melching.
Hello.
Darren Doctorman.
I'm going to stop the music any chance I can.
And Ashley E. Miller.
I'm tone deaf.
What?
What is Can't Stop the Music Week?
We'd like to know, too.
I know. We never really talked about this one. Can't Stop the Music Week is movies about music and musicians. Movies about music and musicians. So it'll be a very musical week.
And let me tell you, there are a lot of great movies about music and musicians. I don't know what it is that's so compelling, at least to me, about movies about musicians and music.
Well, maybe you were a frustrated musician in another life.
Maybe I was.
Well, there's a very close relationship between music and movies. First of all, they are the only art forms that have a beginning, middle, and end and travel through time. That's a podcast for later. But because they go forward and you experience them in a linear fashion, and they end,
And sometimes they have different endings.
Well, choose your own adventures are wonderful.
You know what we're missing for this podcast? Remember at Jeff Bond's birthday a couple of years ago where he had the theremin player at his birthday party? And the guy would play the theremin all through the party.
I wish I'd known. I should have brought the theremin.
It was such a hit, that theremin player. You could have brought the theremin and played the theremin.
If only I'd known.
Or brought a blaster beam.
Well, I don't have one personally, but I've seen it played live, and it's amazing.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, man.
But V'ger is not a musician.
Can't Stop the Music. Are the Village People eligible this week for Can't Stop the Music Week?
The Village People are always eligible.
I'm waiting for that
Just
movie.
Just wait till you hear my choice.
Bohemian Rhapsody is a big hit in theaters, but I'm waiting for the Village People biopic.
Well, you're going to have to wait just a little longer. 50 years.
I guess so. And that's when Ashley says, "Well, as a matter of fact, I'm currently writing that right now."
The protagonist is the construction worker, and
the nemesis is the Indian who can no longer be called the Indian, who is now the Native American member of the YMCA crowd or whatever.
I think you're traveling down a dangerous road, Mark.
Well, who are the four Village People? It was the Indian, it was Native American, the policeman, the construction worker,
and then some other
like a leather guy, right?
Yeah,
like
a leather guy.
leather chaps guy,
a motorcycle guy who was a leather aficionado.
Eric Estrada. Okay, I'm glad we got that resolved. Thank you. Okay, well, you know what? I guess we should move on with the show.
Maybe
Steve.
we should start the music.
That's Maestro.
Too many notes.
Give me a beat.
Steve Melching, Monday.
Well, it's funny you should say that because you just quoted my pick, the movie I Want to Program.
Amadeus by Falco.
Is legitimately one of my favorite movies of all time. I absolutely adore it. It's in my top 10. It will always be in my top 10. I just love that movie for so many reasons. It came out in 1984, and it was one of the first grown-up movies that I saw in a theater. That it made me feel, like I'm seeing an important film. I was like 16 years old, and here's this epic story about a famous historical person, and of course directed by Milos Forman and based on the play by Peter Shaffer, who also wrote the screenplay.
I don't know if it should be eligible.
What are you talking about?
Because Salieri did stop the music.
No, only the Grim Reaper of Death stopped Salieri's music.
That's exactly right.
Okay,
And you know, that's the amazing thing, an amazing thing about music, and this always blows my mind when I think when I go to an orchestral concert and listen to that kind of music, that human beings were able to create all these different musical instruments over thousands of years, starting with percussions and then getting into woodwinds and stringed instruments and brass, and people figured out how to put them together, and then how to craft sounds, craft the music, write music for them, create a system to write it down, so that musicians for all time can put that music on a stand, pick up an instrument, and reproduce it exactly the way it was intended by the composer. And, you know, I went to a Beethoven concert last year, and, you know, I was thinking this music was written like, 300 years ago? And it's
not quite.
Well, 250.
250.
It's just
super dusty.
It was just blowing my mind. I'm looking at, you know, there's like 80 musicians on stage, and they're playing this 250-year-old music, and it sounded amazing. But anyway, so back to Amadeus. I think it's a brilliant movie.
It is.
I absolutely love it. Great cast led by F. Murray Abraham, who won the Oscar for playing Salieri,
And later went on to be a truly not very good Star Trek villain in Star Trek Insurrection.
This is true.
But he's
you
great.
Make this a Star Trek free podcast.
Well, I just want to say, if you're enjoying the 430 movie, check out our sister podcast, Inglorious Trexperts, also available wherever podcasts are.
I prefer the
All
term
the F.
sibling
Murray
podcast.
Abraham you can shake a stick at.
Don't shake your stick at
F. Murray Abraham.
ever.
No,
He doesn't like that.
you might bite it right off.
And, of course, Tom Hulce played the title character,
Right.
Amadeus. I believe that role was originated on Broadway by
Mark Hamill. Well, I have to say, I did see it on Broadway.
Did you really?
And I actually prefer the play.
Interesting.
But which is interesting because I didn't love the movie when I saw it because I'd seen the play and loved the play, and now I love the movie.
Yeah.
You know, because enough time has passed. But when I saw it, I really preferred the play. And I don't know if Mark Hamill originated that role.
I don't think he did. He did perform it.
He did perform it, and I think I saw it with the original cast. I don't know if I saw it with Mark Hamill.
Well, it's
but
amazing. How
it
did
was
he
a
play the
great
piano
play.
with missing a hand?
He had a robotic hand.
Oh, right. Okay, cool.
Didn't you see the movie?
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, that's on our other podcast, War Story. No,
All right.
Bum bum.
no, you can do that as long as you want because we don't have to pay a license fee for classical music.
to sing
Do-
classical.
Mozart, yes.
we can you can sing that to your heart's content.
But interestingly, I think Tom Hulce and F. Murray Abraham are both nominated for Best Actor, which I think was it's the last time I think two actors from the same film were nominated in that category.
And didn't
together.
F. Murray Abraham win?
Yes.
Yeah, and deservedly so. He's
yeah, he's
magnificent
brilliant.
in that movie.
Jeffrey Jones, of course, is great in it. Back before we knew that he was into some odd
Back
stuff,
before he was
but-
400 pounds. Yeah.
But he's hilarious. He's absolutely hilarious in it. And Vincent Schiavelli has always been one of my favorite character actors.
Except as Dr. Kaufman in Tomorrow Never Dies.
Right?
Oh, God, he's awful in that movie. And, it's so funny because I found out they were actually talking about spinning off a Dr. Kaufman series from that movie.
What? I thought it was a Michelle Yeoh.
No, they were, but the producers loved Vincent Schiavelli as Dr. Kaufman. They thought it was so great. I hate that scene.
Huh.
Anyway.
Well, he's in a terrific movie called Taking Off that was also directed by Milos
Milos
Forman,
Forman.
his first American film, and he just is a total scene stealer in this movie.
And in Buckaroo Banzai.
yeah, but he's great in everything. I was so bummed when he died.
He also gave
Except
Angel
Tomorrow
back
Never
his
Dies.
soul in Buffy.
Oh, and of course Amadeus. I like to say that at least for me on the 430 movie, I'm not necessarily trying to pick the movie that I think is the best movie in any given category.
Sure, certainly not.
It's like a movie that I really like, but in this case, I really like it, and I think it really is one of the best.
That's interesting. I mean, it's really important to emphasize this show is about curation.
Yeah.
It's not about top 10 lists.
Yeah.
We're never trying necessarily to pick the best movie, but the movie that fits the theme and that we feel we also want to shine a light on.
we
That
have
may not
passion
be the
about
most
it.
obvious.
like Cloak and Dagger.
I don't think there's been an episode since then that we have not referenced Cloak and Dagger at least once.
Which means, retrospectively, it was a great pick.
That's one way of looking at it.
Well, one of the things that I didn't really realize at the time, the first time I saw Amadeus when I was in high school and a music student, I think I saw it 3 times in the theater that year when it came out because I was just so enamored.
And it's a long
with it.
movie.
It's like the original cut was like 2 hours and 40 minutes or something.
You know, and Warner Brothers did a great, they put it out as a digibook. They don't do those anymore. I love the digibooks, which
sure.
were like these mini books which had the Blu-rays in them. And they did it for about a year and a half, and I guess people didn't like them because they preferred to have them in standard.
I
love the digibook because it came with like liner notes and it looked like a book.
Yeah, it was
Unfortunately, the theatrical version is not available anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
It's only the
the director's
extended
cut, which I think is lovely. But I would like to have the theatrical version. Warner Brothers, if you're listening.
But one thing I discovered later upon rewatching the film, maybe 10 years later, is that it's a great allegory for Hollywood.
Oh, absolutely.
And I am sure that was the intention. It was showbiz. Showbiz is sort of timeless, but this whole idea of these patrons that are like the studios that are hiring these
and these immature
geniuses.
assholes who are very talented trying to beg for money.
Exactly.
Somebody giving too many notes.
Too many notes.
Too many notes.
The backstabbing, the jealousies and the rivalries and the backstabbing.
It is such a great allegory for the film business.
And then there's the whole notion of Salieri seeing himself as the patron saint of mediocrities and cursing God for instilling in him the burning desire to create music, but denying him the talent that he thinks he needs. I mean, I think that's something that a lot of artists, myself included, can relate to, that sort of imposter syndrome. So I was excited when I visited Prague about 20 years ago. The hotel that I stayed in was on the same street that they filmed some of Amadeus on, including the Mozart home, which like half a block away, and interestingly was also the home of Madeleine Albright when she was a girl.
Oh, wow.
She lived there for a few years. That was interesting, but. Anyway,
great Secretary of State.
I could go on, but I just love this movie, and it's been 34 years since it came out.
Wow, we're old.
But I would encourage anyone who hasn't seen it.
I hadn't been born yet.
It's not
when it came out.
Says Ashley.
In 84?
Incredulously. Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
Just go with it.
You're a liar, Mr. Miller.
But
You're a liar, Mr. Walsh.
Yes, it's a costume movie, and it's old, and it's a costume movie, and it's about classical music, but it is incredibly entertaining. It's so much fun. It's about
Vibrant.
The joy of music. It's visually stunning. It has a great cast.
One of the fun things about the film is that all the characters that are German have non-English accents. They have sort of American accents, so that when you're watching it, you feel like you are a German watching in your native tongue. These people, and it's a really subtle way that he sort of shows the ordinary people, and Mozart was an ordinary person.
But his first choice was Sean Connery with a Scottish accent.
Right. Well, that would have gone a different way.
Yeah. This movie was I think it definitely was the first movie where I realized that that movies aren't kind of born in a vacuum and just sort of appear, that people that you can know work on them. And it's so random. My dad's best friend was this guy, Uncle Howard Brandenstein. And his ex-wife was Patrizia von Brandenstein, who kept the last name after the divorce, mainly because
it sounds
cool.
Yeah.
And unpronounceable.
But I mean, if you look at that movie, I mean, what she did is just amazing. Did she win the Academy Award, or was she just nominated?
She was nominated. I don't remember, actually.
What did she do on it?
She was production designer. She also did The Untouchables.
It won Oscars for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Actor, Art Direction, Costumes, Sound, and Makeup.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was nominated for
she's
cinematography and editing. But
She's
did
no
not
Jessica von Puttermaker.
No, who is? But no, it was one of those things where I just
Never
realized,
gonna live that down.
people do these jobs. Like that, there are creative people who are involved in the process of making films, and I just found that endlessly fascinating. Again, it's like the proof is kind of in the work.
It's also funny that even though it's this sort of highfalutin serious movie, it's funny and it's eminently quotable.
Yes.
There's so many quotes that people don't necessarily recognize, but they're right from this movie, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
And 30 Rock did a great parody of it. I don't know if you remember where Dr. Spichemin comes in and yes, the doctor and the Mozart. He's trying to save Rip Torn. It was very funny.
So there we are.
Yeah, great. Look, great choice. Great way to start the week for a change. I'm kidding.
Wow.
I'm kidding. It's great. Come on. Steve's had amazing choices. Tuesday, Darren.
Tuesday. Well,
What a day.
it is. What a day for a movie. I've been bouncing back and forth as to what my choice would be, but I think I'm finally going to go with Oliver Stone's The Doors.
Oh, interesting.
You sunk my battleship.
Nice. Excellent. I just think it is such a mythic tale told by just these guys who started a band in L.A. And it's so overblown and over the top and crazy and drug-addled, and it's just so much fun. Val Kilmer, I think, is method acting through the entire trip.
Oh, I can confirm that. A friend of mine had occasion to visit the production offices of The Doors and had to step over Val Kilmer, who was tripping in the hallway.
Oh my God!
It's fascinating to watch this bigger than life portrayal of the band, and seeing Paul Muad'Dib play the keyboard is a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, as Ray Manzarek. Yeah.
And on keyboards, the Quintessence Heterock. Play him up the stage.
Remember the tune.
Singing in the witching voice.
And there's the ubiquitous scene where they're just trying to figure out "Come on, baby, light my fire," and it's all sort of coming together magically,
Right.
which is complete BS, but it's fun in a cinematic sort of sense and a storytelling sense, and it's just fun. And none of the one thing that I like about it is none of the retro looks fake. It looks completely real, and there's no bad wigs in it, and there's no crazy costumes going on. It's all very
The only craziness
serviceable.
is on screen. Kathleen Quinlan. Oh my God.
wow.
She's amazing. Yeah, as the witch lady.
The witch lady. And look, I think Meg Ryan is not well cast as and she's probably the weak spot of that movie.
Maybe, but who would you have put in there? It's not a good role.
So in all fairness to Meg Ryan,
It's a crazy movie.
It's absolutely
crazy.
crazy.
The white Harvey the White Rabbit, the Indian that follows him
Right.
around. Oh my God! He starts with that car crash as a kid.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
I love that movie.
I love it too. I remember seeing it, not really knowing too much about the Doors. I had heard some of their music in passing over the years, but I was transfixed by this movie. I mean, this was Oliver Stone at the height of his powers, and to think that he directed that movie in the same year as JFK still blows my mind.
No, that was the Schindler's List Jurassic Park.
That was a 1-2 punch.
But which was which?
right?
Oh my God! I'll tell you. I unlike you, Steve, was a huge Doors fan. So it was a fairly depressing time in my life. So I was listening to Doors a lot, which didn't help. And I remember going to see that movie, and I loved it. And I came home and listened to my answering machine. And my dad was in the hospital, and my grandmother had just flown in from Florida to visit him, and I get a message that she's in a different hospital, that she slipped on the ice, letting herself into his house, and fell and had a concussion or where, and so I had to, so now every day I would go visit my dad in the hospital. I then had to go visit my grandmother in a different hospital.
Oh my God.
And I just remember it so vividly. I so associated with that movie because that movie was so insane, and what I was going through in life was so insane. And
my life was interesting at that point too. I have never been into pop music or rock music or anything like that.
That's why I was so surprised you picked this movie.
It just wasn't in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
But at the time, this girl I knew knew the producer of the film, and she was able to get us tickets to
A. Kitman Ho?
No. To
Clayton Townsend?
No. I'm not going to go through the list. To Robbie Krieger, who was the guitarist from the Doors, and he was doing a solo show in Westwood, and this was my first sort of pop concert.
Concert? Rock concert.
It wasn't really a rock concert. 'Cause he had sort of mellowed.
It's
a bit.
Robbie Krieger. That's true. Yeah.
But and we got to go backstage and hang out a little bit, and there was no no drugs anymore. It's no fun, but it was
That's like
interesting.
coming to work in Hollywood in like the aughts.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly.
You
what it
missed
was.
all the
You know
good
what got
shit.
me into the Doors? It was when I saw Apocalypse Now. Because it's that great use of the end.
Yeah.
At the beginning of Apocalypse Now, and that got me into the Doors. And so when CDs came out in the early '90s, late '80s, and then I found out that there were these two Doors albums after Morrison died that are just dreadful.
Yeah.
Just absolutely awful.
I will say that I'm going to admit it, and we can still be friends. But I always hated the Doors. I've never forgiven them for the death of my boy.
I was my grandmother.
Right. But that said, I saw this movie, and I loved how effing bananas it was.
It's bananas.
Girl, we can't get much better.
Can you dig that?
Can you dig that?
It's just so audaciously made. There's so much energy in the editing and the cinematography, and it's just a really entertaining movie.
It's the Lawrence of Arabia of rock and roll movies.
It's just so gonzo nuts.
Yeah.
And that's what's so great about it. It's operatic.
Yep,
You
totally.
know? And the music lends itself to that. And, it's Oliver Stone. We talked about JFK. What a year. JFK and the Doors. I mean, man, that was crazy. And I love the Doors, and it's just, I know a lot of people who like the band didn't like the movie, but I love the Doors. I still love the Doors. I mean, it's just, and it really captures, this, Jim Morrison was such an interesting cat, I'm just watching his.
Also super high.
Really? But and the way they met and their success and also so much of when you came out, the mythic elements of Hollywood when we came out here, like the Whiskey a Go Go and all these things that were sort of minted, by the Doors, and it was I think it's a great choice. I love it.
And being a fan of the Gorn, I love the Lizard King.
I mean, but they have so many great songs. I unlike Ashley, I love it. What's your favorite Doors album?
I only, this is a sad admission, but after the movie came out, I went out and bought a 2-disc best of album.
Oh,
So
yeah,
that's
the best
only
of album
I have.
was good.
I still listen to it all the time.
See, I had a girlfriend in high school who was really into the Doors, so she got me into the Doors. And but I
Was she
loved
23
the Doors.
at the time?
No, she wasn't 23.
A shame.
Didn't Kilmer perform? Didn't he sing
Yes.
all the performances that are in the
did.
film?
And then they put out a soundtrack album, which was him singing.
Yeah.
Right.
Who cares? Who wants Val Kilmer singing the Doors? I want Jim Morrison
It's
singing
better
the
than
Doors.
watching Willow.
That's true.
Yeah, it's better than watching
Mad
Willow.
Mardigan sings the blues.
What wouldn't be better than watching Willow?
movie's over.
Swift kicking the
Warwick Davis.
Is
Okay,
everybody
well,
in?
I think we've talked way too much about the Doors.
No, we haven't.
The doors of imagination are closing. Now on to
Please stand
Ashley
clear
Miller
of the
for
doors.
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
The exit.
On Wednesday.
Welcome.
Here's the thing. I think there are a lot of really great, just stories about musicians, adaptations of their lives. I mean, we could all probably list just a ton of them, and we will on Friday. But I think that, when we're talking about musicians, movies that are really about music and the making of it, that I think sometimes it's valuable to step outside our comfort zone and look at documentaries.
Yes.
Okay. And the documentary, it really had an impact on me as a kid because I was just a huge heavy metal fan, and I was just a huge fan of this band, and it was such a celebration of them and their trials and tribulations.
I know what's coming.
Marty DeBurgis.
Oh, come on. First you take the doors, then you take my backup. I'm leaving. God damn it.
1982 documentary masterpiece. This is Spinal Tap, following Spinal Tap on their troubled
their
tour
troubled
of the
return
United
tour,
States.
yeah.
To promote what now I think is widely regarded as a classic, Smell the Glove.
An incredible comeback album for them.
Absolutely. And
Also
it
known
just-
as the Black Album.
Yes. And which was apparently really easy to autograph.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just sort of shows, I think, it teaches us things about the hubris of making music. It teaches us about the majesty of rock and the mystery of roll.
And next to Errol Morris, Marty DeBurgis is probably the greatest documentary filmmaker of our time.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't even, imagine.
He's certainly the most self-promoting.
No question about it. And this film is a classic, and I think what it did for me was it humanized Spinal Tap. Because I kind of had put them up on this pedestal as rock heroes.
This
that
18-inch
I
pedestal.
worship. Yes, and it went to 11. And then I realized, no, they're people like me, and some of those people occasionally explode.
Sometimes.
Right? I learned watching that documentary how dangerous it is to be a drummer. You wouldn't think it, but it's incredibly dangerous.
Apparently there's a lot of friction.
And I never knew you could choke on someone else's vomit.
Yeah,
That was a
absolutely. I mean,
revelation.
it horrified me. I mean, for the longest time, I refused to drink other people's vomit
Yeah.
because of that.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Now I just do it, because it's healthy. I'm keto, so it's...
It's so much fun. I remember seeing it in '84, and
Sorry.
was that funny?
No, it
for
is.
some
No,
reason?
that's not funny.
I'm just pissed. I'm sorry. I just,
If you'd like to change the order next time,
Nope.
you can.
No, I think this order works just fine.
Okay. We're all very comfortable up here.
So you saw the movie in 1984.
I saw the movie in 1984 and absolutely loved it. And, of course, I'd known about, Spinal Tap for many years. No, I hadn't. No one had.
They were currently residing.
You were at a
in the Where Are
puppet
They
show
Now
and you
file.
saw the
Yeah,
play once.
puppet show and Spinal Tap. I came for the puppet show. I stayed for Spinal Tap, and I was a little disappointed. But it's just brilliant, and the mockumentary style that was established by this film. Well, it wasn't established because, of course, we'd had the Ruddles in earlier, like 10 years
All you need
earlier.
is cash.
Yeah. But it's so well done, and the performers are so great in creating these characters that are they have depth and they're hilarious, but they're also very real and very sad. And it's so well done, and Christopher Guest is freaking amazing. So is
Michael McKean.
Michael McKean, and
Harry
of
Shearer.
course Harry Shearer. But everyone is great.
Yeah.
Bruno Kirby as the driver. When you've loved and lost the way Frank has, then you get to know what's happening. It's just so good. Everyone is so good in it.
And Criterion put out the Laserdisc with a ton of deleted scenes.
Right.
And it's one of the few times where the deleted scenes are as funny as the stuff that's actually in the movie.
And the test reel they put together, the celebration of cheese, the Cheese Festival documentary.
Yeah.
That basically sold the film. How? I don't know.
I have to say, mostly with comedies, when you hear, after you've seen a movie a certain amount of times, you smile, but you don't laugh out loud. I cannot watch the Stonehenge scene
Yeah.
without laughing.
It's
I mean,
hilarious.
every time I watch it, and Stonehenge was in danger of being crushed by a dwarf. The whole thing with the 11 inches left. It's so funny. I mean, just talking about it is cracking me up.
I've seen them every time they've performed in LA. So I've seen them 3 times now. And the first time I saw them, they were doing Stonehenge, and it came time for Stonehenge to come down on stage. But instead of it being the tiny little Stonehenge, it was so big it couldn't fit down out of the rafters. So this one pedestal started to lower down, and then you heard this horrible screeching sound, and then it just got stuck up there, looming over them. And Nigel Tufnell did a guitar solo, and the other band members left the stage. And he's up there playing the guitar and like getting violins and using the violin like a bow on the guitar strings. And then this video screen comes up and you see the other band members leaving the auditorium. This is at the old Universal Amphitheater. It's now replaced by Harry Potter Land. They get in a limousine. They're like driving through LA. They're going to In-N-Out Burger. Nigel's up there on stage playing. And then they finally came back on stage.
Did they do the Jazz Odyssey?
I don't think they did. But
Derek Smalls, he wrote this.
And then I saw him again at the Greek Theater years later, and the opening act came out, and it was these guys in these like pinstriped suits, and they were the folksmen, and they were doing these folk songs. And halfway through the set, I realized it's those guys in makeup in different costumes. They were their own opening act.
Funny.
Of course, they were in A Mighty Wind years later, those same characters, but they left the stage and then changed into their Spinal Tap outfits. And
That's
came
great.
back
And,
out.
people don't realize, but at the time it opened, MTV was such a big part of our lives, and these big overheated, hair metal bands, and they these music videos that were just like ridiculous, And I mean, Spinal Tap really captured that metal era of the 80s just so perfectly, and all these bands where the lead singer hated the guys started as friends and started a band, and the whole McCartney Lennon of it all, and Daltrey and Townsend and everybody, and it's so freaking great.
Very few films capture the sights, the sounds, the smells of a major rock band.
It's funny because you mentioned the Ruddles. I was never a huge fan of the Ruddles. Everybody in high school was like huge fans of the Ruddles, and they all say, "Oh, you got to see Spinal Tap." It's like the Ruddles, which I never really liked. And but I went to see it because June Chadwick from V was in it.
Oh my gosh!
I love June Chadwick, and so I was like, "Oh well, I got to go see it for June." And then Count Ibley was in it too. So
Sir Dennis Eaton Hogg.
But oh my God, that Pound for Pound is one of the funniest movies ever made, and the beginning of a very auspicious career for Rob Reiner as a director.
And I think part of the appeal is, and it really is, the music. Not just because the
music
lyrics are
is
funny,
really
because
good.
At some point you've seen it enough times that you can just sing along.
Yeah.
So it's an audience participation experience, which always delivers.
I was so thrilled when Guitar Hero came out, and they had one of the Spinal Tap songs you could play on Guitar Hero.
That's hysterical.
Which one was it? I think it was Rock and Roll Creation.
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember now.
By the way, I will admit I have never seen the Ruddles.
I haven't either. All of it. Only seen clips.
It's a better idea than it is a film.
For whatever reason, everyone I knew freaking just thought that was like the benchmark for mockumentaries and just loved it and thought it was. I just never got it. But I love This Is Spinal Tap.
It always puts a smile on my face.
My
I watch
God.
it probably once a year, and it's always
so
much fun.
Great. And remember the Criterion Laserdisc? It was all black. It didn't have anything, and it had the guitar pick.
Yes, that's right.
It was awesome. That was the only thing that said This Is Spinal Tap on it, because it was just the
Black Album.
it was just all black.
Yeah.
It was.
How much more black? None more black.
And I believe, I don't know if this was just in the DVD or if it's on the Laserdisc that went onto the DVD, but they had an audio commentary track with the band members in character, which was great.
That was great.
Did anyone get the second CD from Spinal Tap?
Absolutely. Back from the Dead.
Yes.
Absolutely.
With the hit single Clam Caravan.
Caravan.
That's supposed to be calm caravan.
Then they did. Rob Reiner was not involved with the sequel they did for TV, which was terrible. Return of Spinal Tap, I think it was.
Yeah.
But I have to say, it was great to see Michael McKean on Better Call Saul singing ABBA.
Yeah.
That was great.
Still got a great voice.
Still has a great voice, and it was just like I was like, wow. And then it took me a second, like I forgot, and then it's like, wow, he can. He's a really. Oh wait, it's Michael McKean.
Yeah.
But how great was Better Call Saul this season?
Wonderful.
As we'll talk about on our podcast.
Saul podcast.
Calling Saul, son of Saul. What? Okay. Anyway, so that was Wednesday. This is Spinal Tap, which was also Thursday. No. Okay, so I'm now picking Thursday. Look, I probably should pick Prince in Purple Rain. But I don't have much.
Start this
No,
again.
I don't have much to say about it. So I'm actually gonna pick Alex Cox's Sid and Nancy.
Okay, yeah.
It's a phenomenal movie, another '80s movie about the tortured, difficult. That's a polite word for it. Relationship between Sid Vicious and Nancy Spungen, who Sid eventually killed. It's a movie that probably Gary Oldman should have won the Oscar for.
Right.
He's so brilliant. Playing Sid Vicious from the Sex Pistols. It was, Alex Cox was a total enfant terrible of the indie film scene in the 80s, a provocateur. He did a movie with Sandinista, or what was it that he did? I don't remember, but Alex Cox was such an interesting director, but he was a total anarchist and left-wing, super left-wing, and kind of his career sort of imploded shortly after this. But Sid and Nancy's a great movie. It's dark. I don't watch it a lot because it's super depressing. But really, really great movie, and sort of celebrating the, anarchic spirit of punk.
It's got a real gritty feel to it. I've only seen it once back in the day. Is it on Criterion?
It is on Criterion.
Yeah, I
Criterion,
need to revisit. I want to revisit
released it, and it's a beautiful disc that Criterion did. Highly recommended. Also had the Criterion Laserdisc, which I don't think I ever watched.
Nor will ever watch.
No, that's true, because I gave it away to a friend of mine who actually still watches Laserdiscs. Who thinks Laserdiscs are better than Blu-ray? Probably thinks it's better than 4K UHDs. Keep deluding yourself. But he got a lot of good Laserdiscs out of the bargain. But yeah, I think Sid and Nancy's a terrific movie, and obviously
provides a nice contrast with the other films in our.
Well, yeah,
selections.
it's not a popcorn movie.
No,
and it's not. It's a tragic.
But there is a linear progression between the movies that we've selected.
That's very true.
And in a way, I'm glad that you took the Doors and Spinal Tap from me, because
how happy
I
you
do love Sid and Nancy, and I just think it's a really terrific film. And I was really into Alex Cox, and then I remember whatever that next movie was, that Walker. Walker, remember
Texas
Walker?
Ranger?
No, but and then he did Straight Outta Hell. That was it. Right. Okay. So it's all coming back to me now. And this is what happens. We unlike Steve, I don't have notes in front of me, and Steve does his homework. The rest of us are just coasting.
Right. You
our
look off his
good
paper.
looks and charm. And I was really intrigued by Alex Cox, and he never lived up to my expectations. But boy, Sid and Nancy's really one of the great sort of overlooked movies of the '80s. Mm-hmm. And boy, Gary Oldman, boy, what a chameleon he was. Because then he would go on and do The Professional with Luc Besson, and then of course what he did recently with Winston Churchill. And you look at him in the Chris Nolan Batman movies. I mean, God, this guy could do anything.
He's great.
Yeah, as in True Romance.
yeah,
That's right.
And I remember, I think Johnny Linden Johnny Rotten disowned this movie, if I recall, when it came out. It's a while ago, but I don't think he felt it was sort of an accurate depiction of the Sex Pistols. But
That's a rotten thing to say.
Right.
And what an interesting band. It's like their music is captivating, but by all rights, it's pretty awful. But I still love the Sex Pistols.
Isn't it interesting that, well, maybe with the exception of Amadeus, right? That these movies about musicians, which I think on some level are really just metaphors for people like making movies about their own experiences and their own art. But the message seems to be that artists are all crazy and self-destructive, right? It's fascinating. I mean, and the reason why Amadeus feels like an exception is that he just seems to be enjoying himself.
He loved life.
Right?
He loved what he was doing, I think.
But
and it was
it
Salieri.
destroyed him.
Yeah,
It destroyed him.
but he loved it.
That's good. So did so did all the others in our
What
in our
they
films.
remembered of it. I mean, 'cause
light
look
that
what happened to
burns.
Spinal Tap. Look what happened to that.
Must we?
So look.
can't look away.
Once again, we're at Friday, which is where we try and throw out some ideas and distill it down to a pick that we can mutually agree on. I think there's a movie that none of us have mentioned that is a real great pick for Friday, if I might.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, is A Hard Day's Night, Richard Lester's film about the Beatles at the height of Beatlemania. Terrific film. Although I have to say that personally, I prefer Help. I probably puts me in the minority, but I just love that Help is basically a James Bond movie with the Beatles.
I like Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Oh my God, with the Bee Gees?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was 7.
There are 4 lights. Wow.
I know.
Let's
I
not
know.
disparage other suggestions.
That's right.
So my question then would be: is something like Saturday Night Fever eligible? That's really musical. It's not.
It's not.
But it's not about
It's not even a musical. But it's about music. It's about the disco era.
No.
It's not
No.
about a
Then we gotta
musician.
open up Flashdance.
Its setting is the disco era.
Yeah.
Its setting
Okay.
is our
And
dance
speaking of
clubs.
disco, our new podcast, Disco Nights, with host Chase Masterson, is available wherever you listen to podcasts. You should check it out. If you like
there's
Star
a
Trek
big
Discovery,
spinning ball at and there's ABBA and it's awesome.
you should call it Saturday Night Disco. I like that title better.
Saturday Night Disco.
It's too late. The shirts are already being made.
Okay. Also, Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash
Walk the
movie.
Line,
Yeah.
sure.
Really, really, really terrific. Remember, there was another movie. I don't know if you've seen it, Steve. I don't know if anybody's seen it this past, because it got a very limited release. But remember Floria Sigismondi from
Oh yeah, I saw it. Her movie,
The Runaways.
The Runaways.
Yeah.
About
Floria
Joan
is
Jett.
this really brilliant photographer who Steve and I spent a lot of time with in Sitges in Spain many years ago. Super, just love her. She's a real character and super talented.
She's got a great eye.
Oh my God, amazing eye! And she did a film about Joan Jett and the Runaways a couple years ago with
Starring,
Kristen Stewart and
yeah.
Dakota Fanning, and that's a great little movie about.
I made sure I sought it out because when I saw that she had directed it, I got to check this out. And it's a good little movie.
Yeah. That's somebody I wish we hadn't lost touch with. I really liked Floria. I
Yeah,
mean, she was such an interesting, dynamic, person. And
She
just
seems to
such
be.
energy.
Gosh, she just did something pretty big.
Handmaid's Tale.
Handmaid's
She
Tale.
did
Yes.
Handmaid's
yeah.
Tale. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad she's starting to find more success.
Yeah, that was the year. I think was I on the jury that year, and then she was.
2001.
Yeah, I met her because we were both on the
right?
jury. We were both. That's how I met her. We were both on the jury at Sitges, and they were doing an art exhibition for her photography, and you came, and we had such a good time.
Yeah,
it was such
great.
a great trip.
Well, there are a lot of obvious movies that you've skipped over.
I'm not done, but you
okay.
go ahead. No,
Well,
I skipped over.
I want to give it.
What?
okay.
You were putting this on me?
If I might interject at this juncture.
Yeah, sure.
You missed Sweet and Lowdown, of course.
Oh yeah!
I
Oh
love
my God!
the Woody Allen movie starring Sean Penn as a jazz musician.
That gypsy guitar player.
who idolizes Django Reinhardt. A terrific.
I prefer Splenda down.
Me too. Yeah.
But a terrific movie. I've always you and Mark
saw
and I
it
saw
at
that at
Telluride.
Telluride Film
We
Festival.
went down to the dump to shoot rats.
I just love that movie. I think it's wonderful.
Why don't you pick it then?
Because I like Amadeus more, and I could only pick one, but it was on my short list. But one movie I wanted to give a shout out to, which I wonder if anyone at this table has even seen or heard of.
Probably not.
Bob Roberts.
Yes, Bob Roberts. No, One Trick Pony.
Oh, Paul Simon.
Paul Simon,
Yeah, sure.
1980.
Right. Yeah.
Paul Simon stars in it, and he wrote the screenplay for it. And it's now available on Warner Archive on DVD, not Blu-ray. But
Right.
The closest I got to seeing that was the Art Garfunkel movie where he has sex with a corpse.
Oh God.
Carnal knowledge? No.
But this is it's a really interesting movie. It was directed by Robert Young, who
From the coffee commercials.
Well, he went
No,
on to
the other
direct
one.
Battlestar Galactica. The new Robert M. Young. He directed new 5 episodes of the
new
2000s,
Battlestar.
the new
Galactica.
Battlestar.
Oh, okay. Because I would say he didn't direct the original.
No.
No.
But
know
the movie also stars Rip Torn.
Well, let's not get ahead of
Blair
ourselves.
Brown.
You mentioned Battlestar Galactica. So I want to tell you, if you haven't bought this, so say we all, the oral history of Battlestar Galactica on sale wherever books are sold, my new oral history of Galactica, you should check it out. It's great. Okay, go
Not
ahead.
that new.
But so One Trick Pony, Paul Simon wrote a number of songs for it, including the title song One Trick Pony, and then Late in the Evening, which was a very successful song for him. He plays a folk rock singer struggling to keep working in the clubs. He had found success some years earlier, but was kind of in the wane of his career. His marriage is breaking up. There's some strife in the band. It's sort of a riches to rags story about trying to stay true to yourself as an artist in the face of pressure from managers and record company people that want you to change your sound and who you are as a musician. And it's a really great gritty. It's filmed on location in New York City. It's got a great gritty look to it. Since it came out in 1980, there's a scene where Paul Simon and his son walk out of a movie theater that's playing Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, well, there's the rub. That's why you love it.
Anyway, it's a good little movie. I would recommend if you like Paul Simon and you like, it's got a real nice feel to it.
Yeah, no, that's a really good suggestion. We didn't mention came out a couple years ago, a terrific little movie, not to live it was a big hit. It was Straight Outta Compton about NWA, which is
awesome.
a wonderful movie that is extremely, extremely good. And then, of course,
Almost Famous.
Almost Famous,
which is a terrific movie by Cameron Crowe,
Right.
sort of semi-autobiographical about a young journalist traveling with a band on tour, Stillwater.
Right.
A really terrific, another epic film. It's close to 3 hours long. I think the bootleg edition is like 3 hours long. Just a really great movie. I love that movie.
Now, are we going to consider things like Don't Look Back, the Bob Dylan documentary, The Last Waltz, or Woodstock?
Is it a mockumentary?
I think absolutely. I mean, there's also Searching for Sugar Man.
Oh,
recently,
yeah.
and,
Searching for Sugar Man is great.
Anvil, the story of
Sugarman.
Anvil, about the heavy metal
We
band.
need Steve
Spider-Man,
Crozier here
Batman.
for that. He loves that movie. My writing producing partner, Steve Crozier, he is obsessed with Anvil. But yeah, I mean, Last Waltz is fantastic. Obviously, Woodstock's amazing.
An out-of-the-box selection would be Walter Hill's Crossroads.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a country
Blues.
Yeah,
Blues.
blues. It's all about going down to the crossroads, sell your
Yes,
soul. Yeah,
that's right.
Robert Johnson. Yeah, that's a great. Wasn't Ralph Macchio in that?
He was.
Well, as long as we're at it, how about Robert Altman's Nashville?
Oh yeah,
sure.
that's a big omission. That's a good you brought that up. We would have been remiss not to mention Nashville. And again, I think I briefly mentioned this, but how could we not say Under the Purple Moon? Oh wait, I mean Purple Rain.
Yes. Cherry Rain and Under a Purple Moon.
Yeah, no. The Purple Rain is
Paper
Prince.
Rain.
Or Eminem in 8 Mile.
Yeah.
Well, let's not forget that it's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes.
It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
The Blues Brothers, man.
Yeah!
The Blues Brothers.
Yeah!
A great, epic early 80s comedy about the Blues Brothers, Blues Review.
I could not possibly agree more.
I
I'm
love that movie.
surprised that we've had so little representation from John Landis over these weeks. This man did some of the great comedies of all time, like Animal House and
Brothers.
American Werewolf in
really
haven't
London.
really done
comedy
it.
weeks.
Yeah, we haven't done a lot of comedy. The comedy
Or-
starts here.
Or Werewolf Week.
That's right.
Or anything like that.
Yeah.
Orlando.
Blues Brothers is another one of the first R-rated movies I ever saw. After Alien, it might have been the second R-rated movie I ever saw, and that's another one I revisit. It's so
I
quotable.
love the
John
Blues
Belushi,
Brothers.
Dan
It's
Aykroyd.
singable.
It's so much fun.
Who didn't
That car
learn
chase
to-
is
yeah,
insane. That's
totally.
the greatest car chases in movie history.
The
Steven
the
Spielberg has a
Nazis
cameo.
falling to their deaths.
Don't tell that to
I
John
love you.
Frankenheimer.
Okay, maybe the biggest in terms of number of cars
yes,
wrecked.
I would agree with that.
The case I love the Blues Brothers, and I lean very strongly that way. The case I would make for Walk the Line is that it was the most successful movie of its kind ever made. And it's also really fascinating. I was lucky enough to kind of cross paths with Jim Mangold briefly, kind of talking about the Wolverine. We sort of got into this conversation about Walk the Line and kind of his view of action scenes and all this other shit. And he said the key to Walk the Line was every song was an action scene. Every song was the song where. So there was only a song if something happened in it. So this is the song where Johnny gets his contract. This is the song where he meets June. This is the song where he breaks down. This is the song where they get married. And it was really pinned to the songs. It wasn't there's never a moment in that movie where there's a performance or there's a song that is not in some way tied to story. And it's actually legitimately great. I think it deserves sort of the accolades that it received and the box office success that it enjoyed. That said, it's not the Blues Brothers.
We didn't talk about "Can't Stop the Music."
Whiplash.
Which
I was going to say Whiplash.
The tagline was the new musical,
La La Land.
the movie musical event of the '80s was "Can't Stop the Music."
Well,
Not my tempo. No, I Ashley brought up Whiplash, which I think is a terrific movie from a couple years back. Really great, and
I think it's his best movie.
Yes.
Actually.
and
I agree.
and another low budget film from a few years back that I adore. Once, the movie about the Irish musician who meets up with a young woman and they form this duet, and it's kind of a love story set in the English music scene. Has nobody seen this movie?
Once now.
Once? It's freaking great. They made a play out of it. They made a stage play. It's in
I
New
saw
York
Twice
now.
Upon a Time. I didn't see once.
Also in 2004, Jamie Foxx as Ray Charles.
Oh,
in
yeah,
Ray.
Ray.
Oh, yeah,
sure.
good. There's so many of these musical biopics. They're all really solid, like Walk the Line and Ray. And what we're missing is
Coco.
They say there's no Ed Wood, Jim, but there is. I've seen it. Menachem Golan's The Apple.
Oh God.
Which
I actually
is
haven't seen that.
this dystopian, cult anti-classic by Golan of Golan Globus, and it takes place in the futuristic year of 1994, in which in a world dominated by the music and drugs, and it's insane. Crazy movie. In fact, you don't need to watch the movie. Just watch that fantastic Canon Films documentary, Electric Boogaloo.
yes.
Right.
That's all you need to know about the Apple. There's a whole run on it that's just fantastic.
I've been waiting to see that with a crowd in a theater.
Oh, God, I would love to see that with a crowd. It's like The Room. You want to see the Apple.
Once in a while, yeah.
Well, now the New Beverly's reopening finally. Maybe they'll show the Apple. We got to go see that.
Does Streets of Fire count?
Oh, it was a musical fable, a rock and roll
A
fable.
rock and roll fable,
Oh,
huh?
I love Streets of Fire.
I love Streets of Fire. And there's no other week we can get it into, right? Unless we do Michael Pare week. So
Or Diane Lane week.
I don't think it would make
Or
Diane
Willem
Lane week.
Dafoe week.
Okay.
Well,
Great. Let's
but-
stop the music.
look, if we're going in that direction, then we got to mention Xanadu.
That is
yeah,
true.
but the difference is Streets of Fire is awesome.
Well, to other people, Xanadu is
Okay,
awesome.
I love Olivia Newton-John. What's not to like?
She can do no
What
wrong.
about Grease?
But
What
Grease.
about Grease? But it's not about musicians.
You're the ones that
that's
I
true.
love.
That's a musical.
But it's Streets of Fire.
Fire.
Ellen Aim. She's abducted by William Dafoe and his band of
And his
tough talking
leather overalls.
leather overalls, and then Rick Moranis recruits Michael Pare to go rescue her from what part of town? The bad part of town, and they team up with a R&B group.
They have a sledgehammer fight.
and they have a sledgehammer fight underneath the L on the Universal backlot. It's freaking great.
Yeah,
It's a rock and roll
I
fable.
remember they were filming that when me and my family visited Universal Studios in the early '80s on the studio tram tour. Like, we're currently shooting Streets of Fire, and they had
That's
tented
back when
in.
they used to shoot movies on the Universal lot.
They had like tented in a whole
yeah,
block of
because
the
it was
back
all
lot, so
night,
it's nighttime,
and
so they could
yeah,
shoot during
and
the
if
day.
you watch the documentary on the wonderful Shout Factory Blu-ray, they talk about what a nightmare it was because the birds would start to nest underneath the tent.
Oh.
And Michael Pare's
And,
hair.
and interrupt takes, and then there would be problems with the tents and water
Would there be
getting
like
in.
condensation
Oh
going
yeah,
dripping down or something?
it was
sounds
it was
miserable.
a disaster. It was a nightmare. But it's such a cool look because it's not the future, but it is the future. But it's really the 50s, and Plus, I love that soundtrack.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Nowhere Fast, going nowhere
And
fast.
Diane Lane, it's like, how do you not fall in love with Diane Lane?
Oh, well, okay, let's bring out our word because it's truly applicable to Diane Lane in that movie. Luminous.
Luminous.
She is freaking she was
possibly
so
sumptuous.
hot.
Yes.
Oh my God. And she's great in that movie. I think she disowns it now, but she was great. And Walter Hill had planned it as a trilogy. It was like going to be this epic thing, and it just tanked. It tanked. But I saw it. I went to a press screening for it back in high school, and I love that movie. I was obsessed with that movie. I think it's an excellent choice.
Well, it's interesting that it didn't make your first choice.
I didn't even think of it, to be honest. Nor did I think of Sweet and Low Down, which is great. I have to say, for me, it's a toss-up between Hard Day's Night, Streets of Fire, and Purple Rain.
3 movies I haven't seen.
Wait, you haven't seen Purple Rain?
You haven't seen Streets
Okay,
of
we're
Fire.
shutting down the podcast. We're shutting down. Shut it down.
Shut it all
because
down.
Steve needs to go home.
I can't. You haven't seen once. Come on,
So
Glenn
what?
Hansard.
In Purple Rain with Prince.
I wasn't into Prince when that movie came out.
How could you not? It was on MTV every 3
I didn't
seconds.
have MTV.
When
I
Doves Cry.
I didn't have no cable. I had no cable.
Every 5 minutes. Did you watch Friday Night Videos?
Sometimes.
Well, there you go. It was on Friday Night Videos every 5 minutes, that stupid video. I mean, that was the biggest album since Thriller.
I know. I own it. I own it now.
You own the album.
But yeah.
You've
seven-
never
saw
seen
the
the movie with
Never seen the
Vanity?
movie.
Was it Vanity or Apollonia? Who was it?
Vanity.
You don't know.
I don't remember that. It's a legendary movie. It's great.
I'm not saying it's not legendary.
No,
I'm not saying
I
I
know.
just haven't seen it. It's one of those movies that I haven't seen.
Wow.
Like
Okay.
the Ruddles.
Well, that's what the show is for.
Yeah.
It's to shine a light on these movies. And
Shine
so
a light.
you should. Did you see Streets of Fire?
No, I never did.
You've never
Probably
seen
does.
Streets of Fire?
But you know what? The thing is, though.
Oh, I'm
that
gonna
now
give
he
you
gets
my
to watch it,
Blu-ray.
and
I
we
think I
can't
have
wait to
seen
hear
Hard
him
Day's Night.
say
That
what
you
he
mentioned.
thinks.
I did see that.
Well, Hard Day's Night is. I mean, that's part of any movie aficionados. It's if there are 100 movies you have to see. I mean, it's certainly one of them. I wouldn't argue it's one of the greatest movies ever made, but it's a very important movie. And to Darren shaking his head.
I was agreeing with you when you said it wasn't one of the greatest movies ever made.
No, I
'Cause
don't
it's
think
not.
I don't think it is, but I think it's such an important
It's a fascinating document
in the
of that
genre.
time period.
Sort of the Beatles at the height of or at the beginning of their huge popularity. There hadn't been anything quite like it, and the documentary style that Richard Lester brought to it. There's some great scenes in it. It's uneven, but I mean, there's some really fantastic stuff. Like I said, I like Help better, but that's me. I wouldn't argue Help's the better movie, but I just enjoy Help more.
We all enjoy Help.
Well, I mean, I just
And we
love
all
that-
need it.
We need it.
I just love that it's a spy movie with the Beatles. I just think that's cool. I mean, they don't like it, but I think it's cool. And it's more Ringo, and Ringo's just fun. So anyway,
That's right.
I think Friday is pretty much up in the air. I think.
really
well, we better figure it out because I know you said Blues Brothers.
I like Blues Brothers.
I would make a case for Streets of Fire. Darren, what do you think? What do you have?
I don't know. I really have no opinion on this.
We've never had this much trouble on
Yeah,
Friday.
This is a troubling one because there's so much bounty to choose from.
Well, we never mentioned High Fidelity or School of Rock or
Yeah,
24-Hour
Rock's
Party
good.
People.
Oh, 24-Hour Party People's
I've never
great.
It's about the Manchester
with Steve Coogan.
music scene. Steve Coogan. It's a really great movie.
That was a
about,
revelation,
yeah,
that movie. And that's the thing I think most
about
people
the
haven't
factory
seen.
in the factory in Manchester.
That's a great movie. And it's available on I don't know if it's on Blu-ray. It's available for streaming and download. I know iTunes
I have
has
the
it.
DVD of it.
Yeah. I don't think I was able to. There was ever a Blu-ray, so I think I got a high
there
def
isn't,
version
yeah.
on iTunes.
And then, of course, Josie and the Pussycats, a kind of
Yeah.
a guilty pleasure of mine.
Me
a
too.
Fun little movie
Me
based on the
too.
Archie comics about Josie and her
And the
band
Pussycats.
and the Pussycats.
But they're not in outer space.
I had a pitch
Parker
meeting over there at
Posey.
Archie, and I remember I said I have an embarrassing admission. I really like the.
It's a fun little. It's a satire of the music industry with Parker Posey as and had this nefarious deal with the government to implant subliminal messages and
You know what
teen
else?
pop music.
You know what else? You mentioned Josie and the Pussycats were missing. Wayne's World.
Wayne's World. Party time.
Excellent.
Yeah, I guess that does qualify, doesn't it?
Yeah. I kind of feel it does.
They're kind of musicians. I
Well,
guess.
no, they aren't, but the girlfriend is.
Right. And then in
Right.
Wayne's World 2 is explicitly about.
Wow, there's so many actually fine choices here.
Here's the thing.
Patton.
I love Patton. Yes, I love the idea of putting Streets of Fire in on Friday. My issue is that Steve has not seen it.
You know what? I trust you guys. If you feel passionate about it, I will borrow Mark's Blu-ray and watch it.
It's a rock and roll fable. And if part of this show is to say to the audience, these are movies you may not have seen that you should check out, I would feel very good about sending the audience off to watch Streets of Fire.
I think for that reason alone, I would go along with that.
Okay. Fair.
Everyone's seen Blues Brothers, and we love it.
Yeah,
everyone's seen
what's
it.
not to like? And everybody knows the Blues Brothers, and it's true. And one of the great car chase weeks,
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Do that car chase week, be Bullet. And
You'll get your chance.
Blues Brothers, and
Ronin.
Testify, Love Me, or Ronin. Yep. Okay, so Monday,
Amadeus.
Tuesday
is what? Oh, The Doors.
Wednesday,
This one goes to 11. This is Spinal Tap.
Thursday. Is it too late to change my vote to Sweet and Lowdown? No. Thursday, it is Ski. Thursday, it's Sid and Nancy. And Friday, Streets of Fire, Rock and Roll Fable. This has been Can't Stop the Music Week.
Another half-ass production of
we're
30 movies.
and it's sort of funny doing a show about music without actually playing any music. But
We can't afford it.
We can't afford it. We'll be back next Friday with an all-new episode on the 4:30 movie, wherever you listen to podcasts. Meanwhile, we hope you'll check out our sister shows. What'd you call them? Not sister shows?
Sibling shows.
One Big Happy Fleet.
Yes.
Our sibling shows, Inglorious Trexperts, the ultimate Star Trek podcast, hosted by Darren Docterman and myself, and Disco Nights, a celebration of Star Trek Discovery featuring host Chase Masterson and her special guests. Meanwhile, if you want to check out previous episodes of the 430 movie or purchase some of our great 430 movie logo wear, you can go to 430movie.com or suggest future theme weeks or tell us how we screwed up, which we did big time this week, at Twitter or on Facebook at 430 movie. If you're feeling really generous, please go on Apple Podcasts and rate us 5 stars. 5 is for favorite. And finally, a very special thanks to Bill Ritter, who's making faces at us because I'm sure we forgot some of his favorite movies, and everyone here at Electric Studios. There's Natalie in the back, producer Natalie Mescal, who is looking at her monitor. Instead of like you would always see Bob Morton on Letterman show, standing at the monitor, or Rip Torn during Larry Sanders. She's like Rip Torn on Larry Sanders, just standing there looking at the monitor. So that's very cool, and we thank you. And until next week, on behalf of Stephen, Ashley, Darren, and myself, thank you for joining us here on the 430 movie. And now Eyewitness News starts at 6 o'clock.
This episode brought to you by Slim's Throat Emporium, home of the Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster.
This show was produced by Dean Devlin and Mark A. Altman and is an Electric Surge Network production.